Hey there, you're watching the Jessa Channel on YouTube. I'm Jessa, and today I am here with more Tyranny. In the last episode, we gained a new companion to our party, and we're going to get to know him a little bit and then make our way out into the world to take care of some quests. We are here in the Scarlet Chorus camp, and before I forget, I'm going to make sure I have the formation set up the way I want them to. Yeah. Custom formation. So this one I think will have Lantry back here, and our two damage dealers up front until we get another party member. Now I think that there are 6 companions that you have available to you in this game that you'll meet along as we move along the storyline. And so I'm going to take a moment to talk a little bit to Lantry. I can see that there are things to talk about with each person, but in order to keep us away from a completely dialogue talking to one companion episode, I'll talk a little bit to them at a time, and over time we'll get all there is to say with them. So let's speak to Lantry. As they're walking out of the camp, Lantry stops his stride, darting his hands about his bandolier and belt as he softly mouths off a mental inventory of his inks and quills. When at last assured his possessions are in place and nothing was lost while he was unfortunately tied to a pole in the Scarlet Chorus camp, he looks up at you with a smile. What might I do for you? Zedma just says, well, before we leave the camp, if you're going to be traveling with me, I need to know more about you. An understandable request. Let's see. Born in Sunder, no kids. What few belongings of fatherly love I've got in my heart are satisfied by taking care of carrier birds. Learned my sigils and spells about 30 years back, and being able to defend myself has opened a life of field study, and haven't grown tired of the wandering just yet. Thank you, by the way, to Grace for letting me know that this is pronounced sigil, not sigil. I've written on all manner of subjects, birds, magic, language, geometry, but my main focus has been chronicling. I find there's no finer pursuit than recording the events of our times. There will always be legends of what happened. Someone ought to be making a note of the real thing, don't you think? Zedma nods enthusiastically. I have always felt as such. Well, aside from that, I don't know. I practice centering stance, draw portraits, make my own inks, and have a sharp aversion to autobiography. I'm about as boring as watching coral grow. So this would interest Zedma, that he has an aversion to autobiography, considering that he has volunteered to be the biographer for Zedma as a Fatebinder who has read an edict twice, and lived to tell the tale. Let's see. I'll ask him how he wound up here in Vendrian's Well. Zedma says, I am surprised to see one of the school of ink and quill here in Vendrian's Well. How did you wind up here? When the Vellum Citadel was set aflame by Kyros' edict, I fled as fast as my knees could carry me. This conversation is starting to make Zedma feel a little bit nervous, as he was the one responsible for burning down the library, because he read Kyros' edict. Every direction seemed a bad idea, but heading to Vendrian's Well seemed the least suicidal option. Mind you, I was laboring under the misconception that the Vendrian god had surrendered and that the fighting in the valley had stopped. Looking first at his left arm, then his right, he reads through the assorted notes inked on his skin. Curiously, Zedma looks on. "Ah, yes," says Lantry. "7th of, sparring, was it? Yes, that's when I crossed the mountains. That would be, 3 days after the Vendrian god jettisoned their surrender and claimed the citadel in the valley. The Vendrian god nabbed me and several other sages moving through the valley. The other sages were sympathetic to the Vendrian god. As for me, I just agreed so as not to get everyone killed, frankly. I think defying the Overlord is a really slow and rather stupid form of suicide. Since we are about to meet some Oathbreakers, perhaps face to face as we look out for this Pelux fellow," says Zedma, "tell me about your work with the Oathbreakers. Perhaps there's something that we can use in the coming battles." "Well, the Vendrian god has several noble born in their ranks, and they know their letters. Problem is, they've come from noble houses scattered across the realms, each with their own private script. That's where the sages and I come in. Between us, we're familiar enough with all the regional scripts to translate and coordinate. But translating is child's play, so I might have helped out a bit more. The old citadel at the center of the valley is a crumbling affair." This would catch Zedma's attention. "And there's no time for proper construction. Seemed a crime not to put my magic to work." So, the fact that their citadel is crumbling may be something that he keeps for a later bit of military knowledge that he can use to try and bring down the Oathbreakers. What did you... What else can you tell me about the Oathbreakers and their forces? Well, the Vendrian god surrendered in 429, I believe it was, and, well, a lot of them were conscripted into the chorus. 3 of the leaders, Captains Ari, Matani, and Florian, never turned themselves in. Instead, they hid in the valley, gathering up what resources they could until they could challenge the local garrison. Florian, Pelux Florian, I think we've already run into him. At the highest count, early in the year, they numbered over 400 or so. Their ranks swollen by soldiers of Haven and Azure that survived the war. They are a dying breed, these Oathbreakers. Most in the tiers have finally come to realize that Kyros has already won. There's a moment of silence as everyone thinks over the implications of this, both positive and negative. And before you ask, as a connoisseur of the inevitable, I have made my peace with the Overlord and bow to his might. A connoisseur of the inevitable. Interesting. So, what did you learn of their plans in your time there? Whatever you know, share it with me. We will need it in order to defeat them. Well, it won't surprise you to know that their strategy is largely non-existent. They cling to the hope that their example will inspire others in the tiers to come to the valley and join the cause. The recent inaction between the Archons has emboldened them, and some even think the Archons fear the Vendrian god. I'm sure they have it quite wrong. So, you provided military aid to the Oathbreakers, as well as being a sage. When the servant of the Archon of Justice asks me that question, I can't help but assume it's an antecedent to some sort of punishment. He looks nervous. I can't deny that I assisted the Oathbreakers, but the alternative was to starve in a cell and maybe lose my head. I realize this was an offense to the Overlord, but it's not like I increased the odds of winning in any significant way. So, Zedma chooses to disregard Lantry's, not really address Lantry's fear of punishment from Zedma. Zedma knows that unless he had a good reason, he really wouldn't punish Lantry. He skips right to the important part, the military information that Lantry revealed. So, you're an expert with fortifications? Hardly. But I am an expert on preservation magics. The same cantrips we use at the School of Ink and Quill to preserve our manuscripts against worms and decay are, in principle, as applicable to stone as they are to parchment, plus or minus some improvisation. Interesting. Zedma is silent while he considers these implications, wondering what sort of improvisation might be necessary. And of course, Zedma is extremely interested in the School of Ink and Quill, having made it his before, as he was studying in the guild before he became conscripted to Tunon, the adjudicator. He wanted to join the School of Ink and Quill and consider them to be the finest sages. And really, if there's any hope for the future, it relies in the ability to keep the knowledge of the past alive. So, while considering this, he says nothing. Lantry says, well, I trust my future actions will show I mean to be of service, not a source of problems. Zedma says, well, I certainly hope so. How did you wind up a prisoner of the chorus? Zedma waves at the post that once was Lantry's stopping place. I had to send some missives that meant getting to a clearing where my terns and doves might find me. Also, Zedma would like to ask him later on about these terns and doves. Perhaps he can use it to send messages if needed, since they're all trapped in the valley and they're not getting out. The patrol with me was ambushed by the Scarlet Course. I tried to flee the scene, but some youngster tackled me, and well, out of one fire into another, that's been a running theme this year. Some youngster tackled him. Well, let's hope, Lantry says, that for the moment the fires have been quelled. And then suddenly realizing what he's saying and how it could remind Lantry of the burning library, he says quickly, we'll talk more later. For now, let's rest. And then he walks away. Indeed, I have a finite appetite for discussing myself, says Lantry, walking behind him, and I'm more than sated. Let's rest and then press onward. So, a little bit of conversation with Lantry. One of the things I enjoy so much about this game is that the game gives you plenty of background and framework to work with, but still you can also create your own story as to why you're choosing the different answers that you are. So that's really cool. So we're going to go over here and let Verse rest, because otherwise, since we're going to run into some combat and not be able to handle that, the three of us. So we're going to rest for 8 hours. Unfortunately, that's going to lead it to be dark out, which is too bad. But I hope that you will be able to see. I will make sure in editing to try and brighten this. And actually, let's do that right now. We can, over here in the options, perhaps brighten this a bit so it doesn't show up too darkly on YouTube. Nope, that's high. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Wow, that was intense. How about, it was at 1. So I'll do 0.9, see how that looks. That's a little better. Let me know how that looks in the comments. So, oh, before we leave, we do have some looting to do here. I'm gonna grab whatever we can that might help us in the coming battles and trials and tribulations. And watch out for the piggy. Watch out for the piggy. I don't think... Actually, you know... Before we go... Ooh, good. We can open that now. I was just gonna say... That's great.
What do we have?
Perfect. I was just gonna say... Oh, ooh. We found something here. Okay. That we might actually do some training before we head out to better our chances at being able to survive. Oops. To survive. And I think over here... I'm gonna speed up things here. There might be something we can open over here. Can she get that? Yes, good.
Good thing I keep a torsion wrench handy.
Yes, good thing you do. And that gives you a level up. Oh, good. Okay. So... let me hit up the inventory here. And that was... yep. Some potions. I'll stick that in your inventory. Some rot spear, which gives you the enraged infliction. I'll put that here. This is elemental barrier. Yep. And this whetstone would be perfect for you, actually. Ah, yep, you already have 2 of them. Perfect. And we do have a level up. Might as well. I'm going to pause while I work through how I want to do this, and then I will let you know what I chose. I ended up giving her a point. I noticed that she comes very low in health, affliction duration, how long, which is, that's fine. She doesn't do a lot of magic. This one she doesn't need a lot in. She has a pretty high ability and spell cooldown for her abilities. Pretty high accuracy. Not a lot of attack strength. I don't know if that's necessary for it, but it seems like she would need to do powerful attacks, but I guess it's more for her about speed. I did give her 1 point in health because she's just kind of low on health and frequently finds herself in the midst of battle, surrounded, and she goes down somewhat quickly. So I wanted to bolster that a little bit. She has a -10 dodge because she has the red geyser, which is actually something I don't want. I think I might want to take that off, that stance. Over here, I gave her the Know Your Enemy. When an enemy strikes verse, she gains a passive bonus to dodge and parry skill, so that's really helpful. I want her to be able to dodge and duck and bob and weave and then dive in for the kill type of thing. The stance, though, I want to take a look at real quick before we head any further. Adds bonus damage to your next attack. So she fights very aggressively. So yes, a portion of the damage she takes will empower her next attacks. This one is focus on striking with precision. And I think I might take this.
I see
instead.
You there.
Woo! She's intense. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. That's intense. Talents. Yeah, passive bonus to dodge and parry. Yeah, okay. So, I think I have them set the way I want, and just in case, I want to save that after a level up. And I think it's time to meander. Let's grab up the whole team. And there's something to grab here. Then we'll head out to the map. So I'd like to do all of these if we can. Actually, I'm going to save this one because I think we're going to need another companion. I have a feeling. But this one might be okay, and this one. I'm hoping I can go... Well, the road means... I'll just do this one and come back to the camp. I'm trying to, like, minimize the amount of time I spend traveling back and forth between places, basically. It'll take you 5 hours to complete your journey from Scarlet Course Camp to Remote Settlement. Let's do that. Your path is blocked by a small group of Vendrian guards. You can go no farther until you deal with them.
That's far enough, Fatebinder.
A woman's voice booms from atop a nearby outcropping. Flashes of aquamarine body paint tell Zedma that the blue body pigment, the bladed staff, and the complex braided attire are the traditional trappings of the School of Tides. According to the Fatebinder Regolis, the majority of the school fled before the coming of Kyros. The remainder were last seen during the first campaign in Vendrian's Well. The School of Tides traditionally studies the magic of water and gravelight, the art of directing the moon's arcane light into a baleful, searing energy. The aquamarine body paint peeks out from under her loose-fitting traveler's garb. Her outfit is festooned in braids and knots of sailor's line. Flanked on either side by warriors dressed in Vendrian guard regalia, the woman leans on an elaborate bladed staff pulsing with arcane energy. A swath of blue fabric rests draped over her arm. Zedma eyes the fabric and then recalls that it is a symbol of diplomacy and truce recognized across most of the known world, and it is a custom the Tearsmen hold dear. To harm another person under the auspices of a blue flag is a grave offense in both the Tears and in Kyros' empire, and the customary punishment is death.
In accordance with ancient customs north and south, I offer and request a delay of blade. There are matters we must discuss without fear of reprisal.
The woman bows deeply, lowering her head in a practiced display of etiquette. The warriors by her remain in a ready stance, their nerves clearly on edge. Zedma is fighting between the urge to show off his knowledge, particularly to Lantry, the sage, and the fact that he does know the accordance of ancient customs north and south. However, I think at this point he's just going to wait and see what happens. Remain silent, and with a wave of his hand, motion her to continue.
I am Ebb of the School of Tides, and today I speak on behalf of the Vendrian Guard.
Zedma nods, lowering his head gracefully, and says, I am Zedma Arcannon, a Fatebinder of Tunin, and an emissary of Kyros. I will hear your words, for now.
As is our custom, we are ready to kill to defend our lands, but we kill only in fair battle. We don't slay our prisoners. We know this isn't Kyros' way, but we must have hope.
Zedma listens carefully.
A few of my kin have gone missing, and though they may have perished, I have to inquire on the off chance they still live. If Captain Tarkus Deimos still lives, we would negotiate for his release.
All right. Zedma considers quickly. He wants to demoralize the Oathbreakers. If he can get them to surrender again, perhaps they will all survive Kyros' edict, which has doomed this entire valley, Vendrian's Well, to an edict of, I forget what it is, an edict of something. Basically the whole valley's going to fall. And so if he can get them to be demoralized enough to surrender, then perhaps they can avoid a whole lot of bloodshed. Grasping for time, he quickly says, "Sorry, that name means nothing to me." Now, one of the leaders of the attack of Edgering Ruins, Tarkus Demos, was subdued during the battle. In accordance with the Scarlet Chorus's request, Zedma ordered Demos to be conscripted into the chorus. And Zedma does remember this, but he wants to play for time. "Sorry, that name means nothing to me."
No, I'm sorry. I'm asking about one man out of thousands that have been slain by Kyros' forces. It's not like I remember the name of all your friends that I've killed.
Zedma considers that he has no friends that she has killed, but she need not know that.
If I may make one more inquiry, what of Palox Tyrell? Did he survive?
Palox Tyrell? Let's see. Though Zedma has the luxury, let's try this again. Though Zedma rarely has the luxury of matching names to the countless tiersmen that he's encountered, he is reasonably certain that she is asking about the Vendrian Guard warrior that took Drastus hostage at Edgering Ruins. Zedma suddenly recalls, yes, the man that he dived forward and took the knife out of his hand to save Drastus's life. The leader of, the commander of the disfavored. However, the disfavored warriors tore the man apart in revenge. I think he's going to tell them that Palox Tyrell is dead. Also, keep in mind that just now, back in camp, Lantry told him that there were 3 commanders that were still out there avoiding the 2 armies of Kyros. Palox Tyrell was one of them. So an attempt to demoralize her by telling him the truth, and that it also would happen to bring her down. Perhaps word would get back that one more commander has fallen and that they need to surrender again. It just so happens that Palox Tyrell is dead. I tried to stay his blade as he attempted to kill the commander of the disfavored. However, the disfavored showed their wrath by tearing him apart. Limb from limb, if I recall. She nods slowly, saying nothing for a long moment.
My apologies, Fatebinder. I had a terrible feeling this errand was in vain from the start.
Zedma nods and says, "It seems to have been so."
I had no expectations that our friends could be saved, as I'm sure the time for swapping prisoners is long gone. But at least I know of what became of them. That'll have to be enough.
Secretly, Zedma is irritated inside that she seems no further bowed, no further cowed, maybe. "I'm sorry you did not find what you were seeking," he says, with a small bow, very small bow. "But I do have some questions for you, since we are attempting to parley."
I will entertain them as best I can. After all, understanding is the only hope we have. What is it you wish to know?
Really, what Zedma wishes to know is how to defeat them. So let's find out about their strengths. How did you and your friends overthrow the garrison?
I would joke that the voices of Nerat left the gate unlatched, but dozens of warriors lost their lives taking the citadel. There was no secret to it. We simply attacked with speed and certainty at a time when the Archons were elsewhere in the tiers. The Scarlet Chorus had a rout, and what few disfavored soldiers were present made an impressive showing. But they were surrounded and overwhelmed once the chorus fled.
Zedma thinks, So, it was simply a matter of waiting until the parents were away and then catching the kids unaware. So it was really not any true triumph on the part of the Oathbreakers. Aloud, he says, "So, why do you resist Kyros? What are you trying to save? If you could surrender, you would save so many lives." And in his head, he thinks, including my own.
I grew up without my knee bent to Kyros, and if I'm going to bow to someone, let it be another Tearsman. We've ruled ourselves just fine for centuries, so we'll give our lives so that our sons and daughters might rule themselves.
So you are fighting for memories to be held, hopefully in your next generations. But your sons and daughters, he says, almost frustrated, flinging the words out, your sons and daughters will be beset with constant battle, as their forebears were. Forebears were. I can't speak that word. Forebears were. There we go. You'd prefer that to Kyros' order? Perhaps even peace.
You make conflict sound like a bad thing. Yes, the younger realms saw frequent battles, but it was never this wholesale slaughter like we've seen of late. No Tearsman ever cast an edict on the soil, or forced prisoners to kill each other, or butchered beastmen tribes.
When she says the word cast an edict on the soil, Zedma flushes with embarrassment. And then he flings out almost defensively, "What makes you think you have a chance?"
Oh, we don't. Those who believed Kyros could be stopped all died years ago, in the first wave of fighting. It's not about the hope of victory. It's about the hope of inspiring others. It is very likely we will fall here in Vendrian's Well. But perhaps others will arise elsewhere.
So you are willing to lay down your life for the hope of possible inspiration? He shakes his head sadly. But a mage like you. I have read the stories. I have studied the schools of different schools. I know that the school of Tide mages were at times as persecuted as any other. What mage like you would not be the subject, but a mage like you would not be the subject of such superstition and fear under Kyros' reign?
I doubt life is any better sworn to some mad Archon. I'd rather stand with my fellow Tearsmen, or I suppose, stand immediately behind them in the event of an attack.
At that remark, her soldiers flanking her exchange shocked looks. Ebb turns her focus to her compatriots.
Yeah, you heard me. Way things were years back, you'd all be calling me a water witch and conspiring to sell me out to the nearest sage. Just because I'm helping you stop Kyros doesn't mean I've forgotten the hospitality of ages past.
Zedma flings out an arm in frustration. You see there? You can't even make amends with the two people who stand there, claiming to protect you.
And people wonder why the Tearsmen could never unite in time to fight back. It's refreshing to see that some things never change.
It does seem that some things never change. Zedma says, in frustration, let me ask you of something else. She nods, silently awaiting your follow-up. Zedma considers, if we cannot get these stubborn Tearsmen to surrender, there will be no hope without at least a chance to talk to them. Aloud, he says, who's in charge of this insurrection? With whom may I parley?
Listen to you. Thinking just like the Overlord wants you to think. There always has to be a person in charge or things don't make sense. Well, we don't answer to anyone. We are each of us sons and daughters of the Tears, and take this task upon ourselves freely. But Captain Tarkus Ari, former Falksman of Queen Vendrian Alanta, is the voice we trust when we seek unanimity.
So they do have someone. And Zedma also remembers that Tarkus Arai is one of the people that Lantry mentioned as being a holdout. So now there are two commanders to bring down, either through surrender or through defeat in battle. So I assume this Tarkus Arai and Tarkus Demos are or were relations.
Yes. Deimos was Ari's brother. We were certain he was dead, but the captain takes family seriously. So I volunteered to find some answers. And now here we are.
Wondering if they may have something to negotiate with the several Vendrian guards, men and women who are currently tied to poles in the Scarlet Course camp. Zedma asks her, prisoner swaps. You say you don't kill unless in battle. Were there prisoner swaps then in the past? You must have taken them.
That is our way, Binder. Here in the south, only thugs and bandits kill prisoners. The younger realms may be guilty of constant fighting, but we never slay each other when the battle's long over. We're not about to change that now.
Zedma thinks she may be a little bit too haughty.
As a rule, Kyros' forces haven't been keen on swapping prisoners. But I know our disfavored prisoners aren't prisoners anymore. I just assumed they were swapped for some of our own.
He's curious to know what their what happened to their disfavored prisoners that they took. Like, did they just kill them? Like she just said they don't? Or what happened to them? They disappeared. So that's something very curious for him to consider and perhaps bring up at the disfavored camp. Zedma says, I have no more questions.
Fair enough. But now a question for you. The Edict. I can feel its magic coursing through the air. Everyone can. But those of us enlightened to the currents of magic feel it most. The wording of the Edict. What was it?
Now, Zedma is a touch surprised, though he really shouldn't be, but he's a touch surprised that even non-mage users can feel, or people who don't really do a lot of mage work can feel it. He thought it was something that he only was burdened by, or somehow it was just his problem to deal with. But yes, it is true that everyone has a right to feel scared. However, he is not willing to just come out and say the edict outright. He wants them to be demoralized. If he can scare them into believing that the edict is a punishment on them only, they might somehow surrender to keep the edict from being passed upon them. So therefore he lies. It is a curse. It's a curse on your valley, your very lands here. Those disloyal to Kyros, disloyal, will slowly weaken and die. He says the last words very slowly, looking her directly in the face.
2 armies aren't enough. Kyros needs an edict to weaken us too? We must have the Overlord terrified. Well, if that is our fate, so be it. Seems no worse than fire bubbling up from the soil. Thank you for letting me know.
This irritates Zedma greatly, and I don't even know if he can hide it. I think a flicker of irritation crosses his face because he wanted her to be cowed, to be worried, but instead she sees it as Kyros being afraid of her. That is not at all what he meant to portray.
I've another question for you, if you will entertain it.
Shortly he snaps, fine.
Are we really standing here and chatting with Oathbreakers? It's hard to watch, like cuddling a goat you're going to kill for dinner.
Zedma considers this and then says, quiet, Verse. You have one more question to ask me, Ebb.
When I was young, my parents told me the Tears were special, and the Overlord's edicts and armies could never touch us. Seems I've been told a hefty sum of lies. So answer this honestly for me, please. Is it true that Tunon's Fatebinders can smell truth from falsehood?
This is important, because Zedma hopes that in some crazy way he might be able to get these stubborn hill people to bend their knee and surrender in truth this way in time, thereby saving more bloodshed, which he thinks is just going to end up killing everyone. Um, the armies won't be able to work together. The Tearsmen will try and fight. It will just be a big massacre. So he feels it's really important to let them think he has a whole lot more power than he actually does. Therefore, lie number 2. That's true. You should know that falsehood on parchment is an especially rank smell to endure. But all Fatebinders have the ability to tell lie from truth, as we are Tunin's eyes and ears out in the world.
Curious. Then I would recommend against reading the work of the sages. You'd no doubt find it an offense to the senses.
A snort comes from Lantry, who's standing to Zedma's left.
And Kyros' edicts. I have heard the sages speak at length that some of the edicts elsewhere in the world have been broken. How is this?
At this point, I think Zedma's desire to impress with the knowledge of what he knows about an edict would lead him to tell the truth here. Knowing that, as far as he knows, there is no clause which allows the edict to end in this particular situation. So it's a moot point whether they know this or not. It varies, he says, sliding into his customary voice that he uses when he's about to impart knowledge he thinks no one else knows. It varies. It varies based on the wording of the proclamation. If Kyros provides a clause allowing the edict to end, that clause can be satisfied.
Ah, so some edicts are forever. The rest are, as long as Kyros has in mind? Needless to say, Kyros' magic is unlike anything we've seen in any Archon.
Zedma says quietly it's unlike anything that anyone has seen. Ever.
You'll forgive, I hope, the questions. The Overlord and his Archons used to be things of legend. Now they're everyday maladies, and I'm eager to separate the truth from the lies I've been told by house and guild.
And he perks up on the last word guild and notices that she believes that her own guild, the School of Tides, may have lied to her as well. And his curiosity and desire to learn about all the magic guilds will lead him to remember her if he ever runs into her again, and if she lives, perhaps be able to talk to her more about her guild.
In accordance to our most ancient customs, let us depart in honorable accord. May peace find you, Fatebinder.
She bows deeply, pounding her staff on the ground twice before turning to leave. Zedma crosses his arms and says nothing, simply watching her go with a quiet, baleful stare. Okay, well, let's take a look around here.
Right.
The game is telling me that there is something to loot in here. I'm not seeing it. Let's see. Toggle loot indicators. Yep. It is definitely saying there's something to loot here.
Can't do that. Sorry, I can't.
But I'm not
Can't
seeing
do that.
it. Oops.
Sorry, I can't. Sorry, I can't.
Sorry about that. I just keep clicking on areas that he can't walk to. There's a sword here, but that doesn't look like it's something you can pick up. Maybe it's a hidden
Point
item.
down.
I don't think so. I don't know where it is. That's odd. A loot indicator with nothing actually there. Anything up here, over here? Nope. There is something down here. Here. Nothing hidden. Oh, a soldier's arm in the bottom of this pond, a victim of a previous battle in this area. Okay, well. Ooh.
What have we here?
Well, let's see what we got. Ooh, good, some gems. More cash loot. Okay, well. I don't know what the game's referring to there as to what could be here. I don't think there's any need to hide anymore. Okay. Well, we need to continue to make our way to the remote settlement, which is very remote. But we will do that in the next episode, as this episode ended up being more talk than I'd planned on. But we'll head over to the remote settlement, and hopefully we'll be able to engage in some hefty battle. Yeah, battle. Time to kick some butt. But for now, I want to thank you so much for joining me in the world of Tyranny. If you enjoyed it, please hit the thumbs up button below, and if you loved it, join the party and subscribe for more Tyranny. I'll see you back here in the next episode where we will, like I said, do some combat, hopefully, and hopefully not die. That'd be cool. Because I'm still not very good at combat in this game, but we'll see how it goes. And as always, thank you so much for watching.